back to order. This is the January 23rd meeting, continued to January 24th. It is now 5:08 p.m. Sorry about the late start. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Member Myers?
Here.
Member Martinez?
Present.
Member Rivera?
Present.
Member Bronga?
Here.
Member Johnson?
Here.
Chair Constant?
Here.
Vice Chair Zalatow? Here. Member Cross?
Here.
Member Volland?
Happy to be here.
Member Brawley? Here. Member Solt?
Here.
Member Perez Verdia? Youth
Hope
Representative?
here.
Thank you. Youth Representative Tyrell? Is absent. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So for the purposes of being kind to our CFO, I am going to ask the members to change the order of the day briefly to go back to item 14E. Is that right? So 14E, which I don't have either, but I bet it's here.
It's right here. Just take it.
Thanks. 14E is AO 2024-8, an ordinance providing for the submission to the qualified voters of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, the question of issuance of not to exceed $4,060,000 of general obligation bonds to the municipality of Anchorage to pay the cost of area-wide public safety and transit improvements. So yesterday, we concluded this item by adding an additional $500,000 and then an additional $60,000 of operations and maintenance, O&M, and we did not reconsider this item. And so is there any objection to quickly taking this item up to have that reconsideration vote? I'm not hearing or seeing any objection to that. So the CFO, Assembly Council, and the clerk worked through the process. They came up with the final numbers. Bond Council was involved in the conversation, and the determination has been made that the clerk has everything she needs and it is in order. And so is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
The clerk says yes. And so with that, I would entertain a motion for immediate reconsideration and urge a no vote.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion to reconsider is made by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Member Volland. Is there any discussion? So again, a no vote is urged. In this case, we're going to have to do a voice vote because this item is not published on the agenda. Madam Clerk.
Member Myers?
No.
Member Martinez?
No.
Member Rivera?
No.
Member Bronga?
No.
Member Johnson?
No.
Chair Constant?
No.
Vice Chair Zalatow? No. Member Cross?
No.
Member Volland?
No.
Member Brawley?
No.
Member Solt?
No.
Member Perez Verdia?
Are you there, Mr. Presverdia? What's the tally?
11-0.
On a vote of 0 to 11, the reconsideration vote has failed on item 2024-8S as amended. Mr. Thurn, you can reclaim your night. With that, we'll be back on item 13B. So I'm not sure who had the floor when we adjourned, or not adjourned, when we recessed to this continued meeting. So, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I've had a lot of conversations about this proposal in the last few weeks and even before that. I've spent a fair bit of time talking to the team at CY, talking to the folks from the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, the Girdwood Housing and Economic Committee, and a lot of engaged citizens. And I think in those conversations, probably almost everyone has gotten angry or frustrated at me at some point. And that's okay, because that's what I'm here for. But I'll say this, through all that, there are two sentiments that have been almost universal. Everyone, or very nearly everyone, wants more housing for Girdwood residents. And everyone feels as if their voice has not been heard at times. I've heard Ms. Yoshimura's frustration, having been working through this process for over 2 years now. I've heard from the Girdwood community and their frustration as they've struggled to have their questions answered or their concerns addressed. This proposal has worked its way along through significant changes in HLB leadership, the municipal manager's office, the assembly, and the fact is that is not conducive to fostering good communication or a clear understanding of the process. It's not to say that it's this or that person's fault, it's just the reality of this situation and the hand we've been dealt. The question remains in my mind, does this proposal, as it stands today, do enough to achieve that shared goal, creating more housing for the community? Will the current conditions on the development be adequate to ensure a high ratio of primary residences? Will it meet the goals we've outlined in the Housing Action Plan? How many lots could or should be set aside for a housing trust or a nonprofit? And I think importantly, where does this fit in a broader conversation around a cohesive plan to address the community's housing needs? To be honest, I believe there is a middle path forward. Frankly, I imagine it would probably leave everyone somewhat dissatisfied, but that's often the sign of a good compromise. And I do believe that if we give ourselves some more time to work on it, we might get there. I can't say that for certain, but I am genuinely hopeful. But I'll say I am not ready here tonight to say this proposal deserves our support. So with that, I would make a motion to postpone action to the meeting of February 27th.
Move to call the question.
First, we need to have a motion and a second. So we have a motion.
Second to call the question on the motion that is on the
Second for
floor.
purposes of debate.
That's calling the question would call the question on the ordinance. The whole ordinance, like end discussion on Holton Hills.
Yes, sir.
The question has been called. Mr. Johnson, there wasn't a second, I'm sorry.
Point of information.
Ms. Brawley.
Thank you. If we vote to call the question, obviously if it passes, we would just vote. If it fails, then that would simply mean that we continue debate on the item. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Salt. I did second if you didn't hear me.
Yeah, Mr. Salt, it was after. I'm sorry. So, but that's okay. Well, let's see what happens with this question. The question having been called. It's not debatable.
Mr. Salt, on calling the question.
No.
Mr. Perez Verdia, on calling the question.
No.
Ms. Bronga, on calling the question.
No.
On a vote of 6-6, the motion to call the question has failed. Mr. Johnson?
Do I need to remake my motion to postpone?
I think it would be in order.
Well, then I would make a motion to postpone action to the meeting of February 27th.
So there's a motion to postpone made by Mr. Salt, or Mr. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Bronga. Any discussion? Ms. Alaton.
Thank you. So I move to call the question, and I'm opposed to the postponement for a couple of reasons. One, this is not a new item. It is basically a resurrected item. And just to put into context how we got here, the original Holton Hills proposal, I was very dissatisfied with, and I heard Girdwood. We went to Girdwood, and we heard Girdwood, and I, along with Ms. LaFrance and Ms. Quinn Davidson at the time, worked through a number of things. The whereas clauses in this ordinance really reflect a lot of the work and context Ms. LaFrance wanted to put in, and I had a lot of conversations with CY Investments, not always pleasant conversations, but we really worked through some hard pieces, conversations with the administration and HLB at the time about the dissatisfaction of the process. And I ended up at that time with the S2 version even, which I was fairly satisfied with, not being secure in knowing that it could be carried out. And so I moved to postpone it at that time because I didn't feel continuity within the Heritage Land Bank or the administration to see the deal to fruition, particularly if we're making a promise to Girdwood that the profits will be used for a lot for them, at least one, and now under the amended version, it's at least two. And so took steps to rectify that, and there's an RFP out for a third-party consultant to really walk this through on behalf of the Assembly to ensure our promises are carried out. So I think this has had considerable time. I noticed that likelihood was possible back in April when we got the money for the consultant and put in the budget. It took some time to get that effectuated through community economic development. And so here we are now. And I think here we are now with a lot of thoughtful consideration having been put into this, not having been in control of this process from step one. And that's not our role. This process was on its way before things ever get to us. And there's only so much we can do to rectify a process if people are unhappy with it. What I think is time is to get this going because, as I've shared through the clerk's office or legislative staff, there's considerable work to do just after the land disposal. There is the entitlement process, which is very lengthy. And if we continually push and wait and let perfect become the enemy of good and still beneficial, we'll never do anything. The perfect deal doesn't exist. But a deal that results in 2 fully developed lots for Girdwood to then just need to build on is a substantial improvement of where we were when this deal was originally proposed. And so I don't want to wait for that to happen. If we say that there is housing urgency today, why do we wait till tomorrow? Also, I think it's really important that this doesn't preclude other actions from moving forward. I mean, HLB has already identified additional lots that could be used for investment. I know there's some other work being done to effectuate the requests being made for the lot that was, to be set aside. There's momentum here. Let's continue to be a part of the momentum moving in the direction of our number one goal, which is housing. So for those reasons, I oppose the postponement. I think we need to go ahead and get this done. And I think it's a good thing for the community. And I don't think everyone's happy with this. And that's okay, because sometimes making the right policy choice isn't popular. Thanks.
Mr. Walland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I certainly echo that. I think that sometimes making the right policy choice isn't popular, and I think we've seen that with other issues related to housing, and including in some of the conversations in my own district around small multifamily development. I do not support the motion to postpone, and in fact, I see it as dilatory. Holton Hills, this project has been through extensive public process. In fact, this was something that was being talked about when some of the members who are on this body now were running for office. We had several work sessions where we involved the Girdwood community. In fact, we all drove down to Girdwood and had a work session there at the community center. Multiple versions we've worked through, as members Alatel detailed, all the way up to an S2 version. And there were folks in the Girdwood community, including on GBOS, who were involved in the drafting of those subsequent versions. Just last night, we moved amendments that were responsive and reflective to input. So multiple lots we've indicated that we are willing to set aside for workforce housing. In a novel effort to use HLB profits for workforce housing, a new paradigm, we're trying something new that is aligned with our goals in the Strategic Housing Action Plan. So I guess I'm wondering how many carve-outs are we going to do? How much more process do we need? Our email inboxes are full of emails, both in support and in opposition to the project. We've had months now to weigh in, to bring forward amendments. And so I think we need to get this done tonight. The time is now. You know, some of the testimony saying, we support housing, just not this housing. Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that we can do to make the situation even worse in Girdwood and make housing even more expensive is to not allow more housing to be built in Girdwood. Let's get this done. Thank you.
All right, I have a number of people in the queue. Ms. Bronga.
Thank you, Chair. I support the motion to postpone this. I really, if I was there to look Connie in the eye, I completely believe that this development will be awesome. But the way this was rolled out was not right. It, in my opinion, was done sneaky, and I think the
Point of order.
Girdwood...
I think the member is speaking to motive.
So a point of order was raised. The point of order was, I believe, the member with the floor was speaking to the motive of the members who introduced it or member. And I think that I'm going to...
I think you need to let me finish. I am trying
You
to
are
say
out of order,
why
Ms.
this
Bronga. You are out of order.
should be postponed.
You are out of order. A point of order has been raised. It is not for you to debate until I have ruled. The members may move to override the ruling of the chair, but it is not your place to start shouting over the chair. So, what I was going to say is that I believe the member could find a way to speak that does not impugn the motives of others, and we can proceed.
So you're letting me talk as long as I don't say that anyone brought this forward in a way that did not make people feel uncomfortable.
That's
I think that we should postpone because...
Ms. Bronga, what you just said was very different than what you said the first time. And what you just said was, in fact, I believe 100% within the rules of order.
Okay. So in May of 2024, the land use plan in Girdwood will be complete. And that will give the people of Girdwood an opportunity to be heard. I feel like Connie's project, Ms. Yoshimura's project, is fabulous. But I want the people of Girdwood to believe that we gave them every opportunity to weigh in on all of these issues. We have Pomeroy development going in that hasn't been mentioned at all. 72 workforce housing spots have been made, apartments have been made, and I have been told that they are $1,000 a month. That is the start to workforce housing. Ms. Yoshimura's project is going to be a fabulous addition with housing for families. But let's do it with Girdwood on board with us. Thank you.
Ms. Brawley.
Thank you. Just briefly, I do not support the motion to postpone. I believe that, that this is something that we can take care of tonight. There are other comments I'd like to make, but I'll save those for the main motion. Thank you.
Mr. Salt, I believe I have you in the queue.
Thanks. I'll stick to the main motion other than just a comment. I don't know if delaying for the plan, if we delay to the plan, it's going to be the initial plan. It's going to cause further delay, I think. I think I'm probably in the place of let's try to get through this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak to not postponing this tonight. I think in the lens of the way it was described earlier, I don't see myself as trying to find perfection this evening, but I do see myself as trying to find practical steps forward. Now, that's not to the outcome of how I'll land with respect to the actual question, but I just think that delaying is unnecessary at this point, and we can dispatch this and move forward. Thank you.
So you took yourself out. All right, thank you. On the question to postpone to the meeting of February 27th, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Salt, on the motion to postpone.
No.
Mr. Presverdia?
No.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes?
On a vote of 2 to 10, the motion to postpone has failed. We are now back on the main motion. I don't have anyone in the queue right now. Ms. Brawley.
Thank you, and I will keep this brief. I do want to respond to, and I appreciate Member Rivera's amendment last night, if we remember adding reference to the Housing Action Plan. And I know that we've had more than one comment on how this fits into or doesn't fit into the plan. As one of the primary authors of this plan, I do see that this fits in, and here's a couple reasons why. One is because, and I want to point to the last set of strategies in our plan that's really, or I believe might be one of the goals, to make the Muni a better development partner. And I believe that this project squarely fits in there. And I think there's multiple dimensions to that. But one of them is something that disturbs me as a planner that I've seen happen in this community over several years. And that is really that a project that goes through the legal process, that goes through the development process and follows those steps. Granted, with any project you can talk about, any particular issues with that, but fundamentally what's happened multiple times is that when it gets to the political process, to this body, for various reasons, many of them good reasons, the project is significantly changed. And I think that has a chilling effect on business. It has a real problematic effect on development. And it is something that we've seen, for example, projects will have the number of housing units cut in half due to community concerns. And I understand the need to be responsive to community, but at some point it becomes overreach and not allowing a development to move forward. And so I do have a lot of concern about that, and I have a concern about it here. That isn't to say the community concerns aren't valid, but there is a legal process and then there is a planning process, and when you're dealing with land use and when you're dealing with land development, that really is a high bar. And so in terms of being a good partner, I believe that we need to see through projects and not just simply delay them, not make significant changes on the floor to the project. Granted, I think the amendments that we've made are good, but I think when you start really messing with someone's business model, because essentially each development is a business model, so that becomes problematic. The other thing to mention, just briefly, is I did speak with HLB staff on Monday to ask about this project and to just have a bigger conversation, because I think what really needs to happen in this community is to repair the relationship that's developed over many years between HLB and Girdwood. And so this project, it's not unique to this. It's several projects, it's several plans. There is internal division within the community, which I think we've seen play out, not just in this project, in other ways. And all of that is addressable. And it doesn't land on this project, whether this project goes forward or not, to fix those bigger problems. And I think there is a path forward. And when I talked to HLB staff, I asked them, what are the biggest hurdles to development in Girdwood? Is it zoning? Are there other things that we can do? And they said, by and away, it is the lack of water and sewer infrastructure. It makes it almost completely infeasible to develop in Girdwood. And so I appreciate desire to have other things in Girdwood, to have other developments, but the economic reality is that we rely on the market. We can have influence on the market as the public sector, but we have to address those infrastructure issues. And why I think this project is really exciting is because it attempts to do that. It attempts to make a project feasible by addressing, again, what is otherwise infeasible to develop. And so, so for all those reasons, I do think it fits into the plan, and I think it is important to recognize that when we are a development partner, that this process where it gets delayed, we drag it out, it becomes this whole big thing, that is not good for business in our community, and that is important because we have a serious lack of development in this community, and that includes the entire bowl. It includes Girdwood, it includes Eagle River, and so that is something that we need to address, and every time that we do this to a project, it makes that worse. So I will be supporting this for those reasons. Thank you.
Next in the queue, I have Mr. Salt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to add to the record that the last 7 months, Girdwood's been busy working other avenues to make Holton Hills palatable to the residents. Holton Hills is still a commercial residential development and was never proposed as anything else. It is there as development, not affordable workforce housing. The issue is there's limited developable land in Girdwood, and it is a desirable set of parcels that is not addressing the needs of Girdwood for affordable workforce housing. So what is now an ideal property is being disposed of, and we have two separate issues. We heard yesterday that approximately 38 new homes have been built in Girdwood, with a median assessed value of these homes at $940,000. Only 7 of those 38 homes has become a primary residence. 31 will be empty, dark, or vacation homes. The community does appreciate the compromises that have been made around multifamily lot and potentially more additional lots for housing. The limitations placed on short-term rentals. During that 11 months since this last appeared before the body, Girdwood GBOS has been busy. They created the Girdwood Housing and Economic Committee. They have worked viable parcels for workforce housing. They have gathered accurate data on Girdwood housing, including short-term rentals. They have made potential incentives to convert ADUs to long-term housing. They have been working on Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. They're only 5 weeks away from releasing the draft. And we also have the HOB annual and 5-year plan due here for hearing on February 22nd. They also plan on interaction with HLB on 6 identified potential sites, or roughly 47.5 usable acres, to include in the annual plan to help address workforce housing. Some plans are simple, as an RV or camping space, to allow the workforce that is currently living in vehicles and camping in the town square a place to live with utilities and modest services. What I need to get me to yes tonight, and I would like to thank Member Zolotel for her guidance and help and assistance over the past couple days, is inclusion in the HOB annual and 5-year plan, these 6 parcels, or some compromise there in between, put into the control of Girdwood Board of Supervisors or other appropriate entity to be used to help solve some of the workforce housing issues in Girdwood, which again is not a Holton Hills issue. The disposal tonight is not the proper time to make those amendments. I will submit written comments on the 2024 work plan, suggesting the parcels identified by Girdwood and the process for including those in the plan to be available for current and future municipal or local community needs, and or transfer to GBOS or appropriate entity. I have asked for an AR to be prepared for February 13th, providing an accurate, clear, and specific recommendations for the HOB annual and 5-year plan. And if passed, it'll reach HOB prior to February 22nd hearing. So again, what I need and what I'm asking for is support of this body to seriously consider future suggestions and amendments to the HOB plan to help solve the need of affordable workforce housing in Girdwood. And I will say probably going out on a limb since they don't line up at this time. But I urge your support for those amendments in the next couple weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cross.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting because, one thing for us to keep in mind is I heard some comments, and I didn't necessarily agree with them, or I would say I didn't agree with them at all, is that they say if we do this development, Girdwood is only getting 1 or 2 lots. No, every one of those lots is for Girdwood. What's interesting is we see this play out in different vectors. In Girdwood, it's higher-end homes. But I will tell you, in other areas of Anchorage, they don't want low-income housing. They don't want that. And what's interesting is we say we want housing options for all. But do we? I mean, what I hear is we want housing options, but we just don't want those fill in the blank in my neighborhood. And I don't think that's fair. Someone shouldn't be demonized or shouldn't have a less of an opportunity, more of an opportunity based on, economic status. And so we say housing options for all. And if you want to buy the lot and you want to develop a smaller affordable property, Connie isn't building the house. You can also sell your house if you live in Girdwood, take your equity, build on one of the new ones, and sell your house at a discount to a teacher if you want. There's nothing stopping people, but the only way you solve the housing problem is it's supply and demand. It's more supply. And we're saying, well, we want to solve the problem, but if you're not willing to address the supply and demand, you're never going to do it. And multifamily properties, if you're going to do low income or you're going to do, I just say affordable, but we know affordable in Girdwood is not necessarily what's considered affordable. I showed you the metrics, and maybe you, Zach, maybe you and Karen, if you can hear online, I ran the numbers on building new construction multifamily out of there, considering the cost, the labor costs, the transportation, infrastructure improvements, and basically, for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath to break even, I think it was like $2,600 a month, just because of the land value and everything that went into it. That's not an affordable rental, which means the only affordable rental is going to be subsidized. Well, she's not building subsidized housing. It means the only thing that's going to be that somebody that works at the Sysmark or something like that can afford is going to be something that either we give away the land and then subsidize the rents. And that's not what this is about. That's a totally different separate project, or that's these other lots that we do. But I think we're conflating two different issues. And so this adds supply where supply is needed, and they can use the income there. And I hope they come up with a plan in order to figure out what they're going to do in order to subsidize the affordable housing that their workforce desperately needs. But even if you build, I don't know how you would do that with the cost of construction in Girdwood unless, they're looking at yurts and tree forts as options to try to get stuff that's affordable. I don't think this is I don't think Holton Hills was intended for yurt construction, but so be it. I would encourage support of it, and every lot that goes up in Girdwood is for a Girdwood resident. Maybe not someone who lives here now, but will live there in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to speak to a couple issues, and then including some that were thoughtfully raised by Ms. Brawley. In terms of the chilling effect we're worried about having on development, I hear that, and it's something to be mindful of, but I don't think that's the reality here. I would speak, particularly to the fact that we've seen Pomeroy come forward with a pretty ambitious development plan, which by and large has been, I think, fairly well received by the community. And I look at that example as somebody who took lessons learned from this debate and thought about how to come forward with a different approach, one that includes, workforce housing, one that includes a community center and a daycare center and things that create value for the community. So I don't think we've seen major developers necessarily discouraged from projects in Girdwood, and I don't think we've seen small builders either, It's been pointed out, 38 new homes, which is about an equal mix of single-family and multifamily built in the last 2 years. On a per capita basis, that's 10 times better than the rest of Anchorage. So yeah, we're seeing building happening there, but the challenge we're dealing with is, I think we started out 2023, with here around 50 people who work in the community or employed but have to live in their cars or other inadequate shelter because there was nothing for them. And I think we ended 2023 with about the same number of people in those circumstances, despite the fact that we were seeing new construction. And then finally, I just want to touch on this. We hear members up here saying that they've heard from Girdwood or suggesting they're listening to Girdwood. You know, we heard from Girdwood again last night. I talked to Girdwood a lot, and I would say that I think the message resoundingly has been not yet, not ready with this project. And I suggested that we should take more time. Obviously, we're not going down that road, but we had a strong voice outpouring from the community asking for more time. We've had the elected body of Girdwood, the Board of Supervisors, asking for more time. And we've had both of the assembly members who represent that district suggesting not this, not now. And so I think it's just, I'm trying to be polite here, but I think it's hard to say that we are listening to Girdwood when the conclusion of the body is so contrary to, I think, almost every voice, both in the community and their representative leadership say different. And then just finally, I would just ask people to be mindful of the fact, a lot of the decisions we make, we have to frame it in terms of what are the impacts to the broader community. We have to weigh what does it mean for the people in my district or this particular part of it against the interests of Anchorage. But I think notably, that's not really applicable here. Whatever good or bad comes of this will almost entirely be felt, no, not just almost, will entirely be felt by the community of Girdwood. And so that weighs me towards more mindfulness of those community concerns when we're weighing this. So anyways, with that, I'll stop.
Mr. Presverdia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few things to add. I voted against this originally and have listened carefully to the arguments on both sides, and there's really strong arguments on both sides. There's an incredible need for housing. The process will allow the Girdwood community to continue to have a role in shaping this project if this passes, and there's good reason to move forward. But I'm also compelled by the fact that this impacts primarily Girdwood and the people who live there, and we're 5 weeks away from seeing a report that's been in the works for some time, and as much as I know that there's opportunities after this to continue to shape the project, once this vote happens, there is a lot that is lost in terms of an opportunity to shape and voice this project. So with all that being said, I think the most important thing in our role is to not just make decisions, but to make the decision. And I'm compelled to vote no, to give Girdwood more time to finish the work that they're doing, and to make sure that when we do dispose of this land, that it's done in the right way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Mr. Volland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to submit to my colleagues that I think nearly every time, we are looking at bringing added housing density to a neighborhood, whether it's Girdwood, South Addition, other neighborhoods, we are going to be asked and pressed again and again for more time. We want more time. And all the while, the housing crisis looms in the background and goes unaddressed. So I think the time is now. We've taken a lot of time on this, and again, have moved multiple versions and amendments that are reflective to feedback. At the end of the day, not everybody's going to be happy. Not everybody's going to get everything that they want. And I'll just say, short-term rentals, okay, that's a conversation we're having right now as a community, not only in Girdwood, but in the Anchorage Bowl as well. And as has been discussed, there's the HOA for this project that would largely prohibit short-term rentals, and we made that apply with one of our amendments to the multifamily properties as well. However, in terms of wanting attainable housing, workforce housing for long-term renters, I guess I don't really see what's stopping a wealthy Girdwoodian from buying one of these developed lots and building affordable housing on it. I'm also very curious, and I'm just going to say this because I believe it to be true. I think there's been a lot of hypocrisy from the Girdwood community on the issue of short-term rentals. And I am very curious about what a Venn diagram would look like if you take those who are opposed to the hills and those who would be opposed if we were just to suggest an outright ban on short-term rentals in Girdwood. Many of the people that we've heard speak in opposition to this project because it's all going to be dark homes or home-shaped objects or short-term rentals own multiple properties themselves, own short-term rentals themselves, multiple short-term rentals. So I would reiterate Member Cross's point. Offload some of your properties, make the situation better. Like I said, I think the time is now. I will just add a couple more points. I don't believe it's true that almost every voice has been in opposition. Over the past couple weeks, I've received a lot of emails from the community in support of this project. And in particular, I think we received one piece of public testimony that I found very compelling from someone, I'm not going to name them, because they're afraid of retaliation from their community, but someone who changed their mind, who was an outspoken critic of this project and evolved in their views and now supports it. And part of that reason is because they said, you know what, the community is just spinning their wheels. They say, yeah, we want to identify other lots that could be used for housing, and they're not doing it. So I don't believe it's true that there's this sort of unilateral opposition to this project, even in Girdwood. And one more point is that Girdwood is part of Anchorage. They're not a standalone. I understand there's different housing needs, but this project, we need to think about the benefit not only to Girdwood, but also to Anchorage as a whole, and HOB's profits, and how that can serve the entirety of Anchorage. Thank you.
I'd like to ask for a motion to extend by 30 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Ms. Zalatel. Any objection? We have all those other items. Okay, thank you. I'm seeing no objection, so we're extended at least to 6:30 should we need the time. Next in the queue, Ms. Zalatel, go ahead.
Thank you. I gave most of my reasons for voting for this on the motion to postpone when I spoke to it, but I want to follow up on this idea of affordable housing because I believe in affordable housing. I help develop affordable housing in my day job. I believe it is truly needed, and it is the cornerstone to any truly robust and functioning community. And affordable housing can come in lots of shapes and sizes and forms, from one end of hotel conversions where you spend about $18 million and get 271 units for about a $77,000 per door price for a single room occupancy, a converted hotel room, to, Cook Inlet's Chibala Corners 2, which is 48 units at $20.3 million. That's $423,000 a door. And it's affordable housing. It has set-asides for low income, people with disabilities, and that nets 3 8-plexes, 3 4-plexes, and 1 duplex. And I think the best way to think about affordable housing is this quote in an Alaska Business article by President and CEO Gabe Laban of Cook Inlet Housing. Affordable housing financing is complex and multifaceted. It is a terrible, terrible tangle of various programmatic requirements and set-asides and reports and eligibilities. And frankly, affordable housing financing is a big part of the problem in developing affordable housing. What I am hoping, though, is that while maybe that's not the type of development that will ultimately happen in Girdwood, that we have made, at least for 2 lots, at least 2 lots more affordable to develop that result in more attainable housing. It brings that price point down because there is a large spectrum of housing that is, I think, somewhat the boogeyman worst fear to that $77,000 converted hotel room. There's a lot in between there, and it's all up to creativity, perseverance, getting an expert who can help you understand how to navigate those things, and frankly, just sheer grit. And it's terrible that it's like that, but it's how it is. All of the housing units I have had the privilege of helping develop have all been a very small group of really dedicated people willing to put in the work, be creative, Google things, honestly, and just figure it out. So I am happy to be a thought partner with Girdwood or anyone in the Anchorage community in any capacity, because affordable housing and attainable housing is what will make our community vibrant and sustainable for the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. I have myself in the queue.
Mr. Constant.
Thank you. I have quite a few things to say about this process, this 3+ year process. But I'm going to ask a question first. Ms. Yoshimura, would you please come? The microphone is off, so you have to touch the little green button to turn it on. So, public process, you're no stranger to it. You've been around a little while doing this work. You've sat up here at the Planning and Zoning Commission. You've developed a lot of housing units in this town. We might actually someday try to get a list of all of the developers of neighborhoods and scale them to see who in the 100-year history of the city who's done more to provide a place for people to live. And of course, you know how scarred your reputation gets in the process, because people who are emotional, people who are willing to say anything despite the facts will come at you and manufacture falsehood. That's just what happens. Some of us get leather skin, been at it long enough. So I do have a question for you. What is your philosophy and approach? What are you planning to do if this is approved today?
Well, I'd like to go back to a group around a small conference table when we were looking at the RFP, and we came away with a vision, actually, for what we thought would be appropriate for Girdwood. No one wants to destroy all the things that people love about Girdwood. The trees, the streets, the vibe, I'm looking for a better word to describe it. But, you know, I am not a skier. I don't even look like a skier. But what I tell you I love about Girdwood is I love the orange cinnamon roll at the bakery, you know. So I do visit Girdwood. I have once owned a condo there. But as far as the vision is concerned, I believe in mixed density. I live in a mixed density community, which is South Addition, and Girdwood is a mixed density community. And it feels a lot different, really, quite frankly, than the subdivisions and the new home communities that I've built and that I currently build, because I'm forced to build a certain type of property due to zoning restrictions. So you take a tract of property and it's zoned a certain way, and then you have to build to that. And my goal with Girdwood, because it already is mixed density, it has, you know, cabins that were built in the 1970s or 60s and 50s, and they're next to $1 million house. And so you have this creativity as far as the socioeconomic community is concerned. And I frankly believe in that mixed density eliminates economic segregation. And that's what I saw when I looked at Girdwood, and that's what was important to me. But really, I never thought about the public-private partnership too much. I wanted to make a contribution. I thought that I looked at all the other, attempts at Holton Hills, and they didn't make financial sense, so I was looking for a way that would make financial sense so that we could have entry level, and I'm going to call it market entry level. It's not affordable. I think Ms. Zalatel did a very good job describing that affordable housing is now subsidized housing in some way, shape, or form. You can't do it as far as market is concerned. But I was committed to entry level as well as single-family homes, and that's townhouses, that's condos, and that sort of thing. But really what I was looking at, well, how the street should look, you know, what the, where the trail should be, what sort of landscaping should be, what should the structures look like. I never thought I would be standing here today after a 3-year process, having to go through all of this, really, quite frankly.
I have another question for you. We've heard much ado about some parts of the project. We hear Girdwood is in support of housing where, yes, in my backyard people, but, and there's like this long list of buts. I think one of the most compelling buts that I've heard in all of this has been, what about the infrastructure? How does the road system work? How does that work in a new development?
In this particular case, I am financially responsible for the installation of the roads, the water, the sewer, the gas, and the electric. That is possible in part as far as financing is concerned because Heritage Land Bank is providing the land to do that in exchange for 50% of the profits. I am personally responsible for that financing to provide the roads, water, and sewer, gas, and electric.
Right. So that does get resolved when a development happens. Right, it gets built. Once you're
Yes.
subdivided and you get to construction, those elements are baked into the system,
Yes.
funded by the developer. Okay. So now we have heard, at least from the petitioner, and this is, I don't know if anyone in the administration would like to suggest it's any different, but that's how development is done in our town, that the developer puts the bill and the infrastructure goes in as the development does. So that matter to me is resolved. There are some arguments about the grocery store not being able to handle it. What happens when a market gets 60 or 80 new clients, in your experience, Ms. Yoshmar?
Well, if you want to have a larger grocery store, or you want to have a hardware store, or you want to have other support services in a town, the first thing you have to have is rooftops. You have to have a population to support it. And if I may, I would tell you that the Valley is a good example of that, because the first thing that happened out there as far as growth was concerned is they built subdivisions. And as a result of building subdivisions, they have the highest grossing Fred Meyer store in the chain. And you can look and you can see every restaurant's there, all the services are there, including a large medical component as well.
Okay, so I think that's all of my questions for you. I could ask and get answers to a lot of questions, but I think I'm going to pivot to more of my comments at this point. And I know you're a survivor. You've been through this ringer, and I appreciate your determination to stick it through. So I have been watching this process now for 3 years.
Am I excused?
You are.
Thank
Others
you.
might have questions for you, but
All right, thank you.
in my opinion, we have heard in the last day from the exact same faction who spread misinformation across the municipality the last time. They resorted to major attacks on reputations of people and what I would like to call unpleasantry. But it's just the unpleasantry of this work that we have to face when we make tough decisions. I believe that the arguers against this development have sacrificed their credibility, and in fact, it does not merit the time we have already spent, let alone future time. There have been voices from Girdwood who have said consistently to me, I support this plan, but I'm afraid to speak because the people in my community who have organized this argument against have acted like bullies and have made life very painful for those of us who have a different opinion. Now I'm going to read one thing very briefly. And it's a selection from an article that was published yesterday by the Alaska Landmine. And it goes to, I think, the ultimate point of absurdity of where we are right now. You know, the same people who have been organizing a very aggressive misinformation campaign across the municipality, one of their leaders, when a woman who's experiencing homelessness in Girdwood, one of their leaders who has multiple properties testified to us that they rent into the market in Girdwood, instead of offering that person a home or a hand up, said, you should come and testify against this ordinance. I think that the quote I'd like to read is that nothing so perfectly captures the hypocrisy and cynicism of Holton Hills like the spectacle of multi-millionaire short-term rental owner co-opting a request for housing from a homeless individual into an attempt to help shut down new housing. I think that just crisply captures the origin of all of this opposition. Unpleasantry. Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think everybody knows where I'm headed. I don't think anybody's going to change their mind here, and I'm ready to call the question. We've been discussing this since long before
Second.
5 of us have been on this body.
Mr. Myers has moved, or excuse me, has called the question. It has been seconded by Mr. Volland. Thirded by Mr. Cross, I think I just heard. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Solt?
Yes.
Mr. Presverdia?
He asked me to text him when we get to the next vote, so I've texted him. He's not back yet.
Ms. Bronga?
No.
On a vote of 9-2, the question has been called. The question is now before us. Yes, please. Members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Solt, on the main motion as amended.
Yes.
Ms. Bronga?
No.
Mr. Presverdia, on the motion to approve as amended.
No.
On a vote of 9-3, AO 2023-137, as amended, has passed the body. Next, we're on to item 14J. Item 14J is AO 2024-6, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly waiving or modifying certain provisions of the Anchorage Municipal Code, including Title 21 Land Use Planning and Title 15 Environmental Protection, to allow for temporary snow disposal sites due to large volume of snow and insufficient locations to place snow.
Waive reading.
Thank you. The public hearing on this item is now open. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes. You just turn it off there.
Hi, Irene Queednow, Sand Lake. So I find this very interesting. You passed an ordinance like this last year when we got dumped on with snow. And I'm actually quite confused. So a lot of the text is the same. But in 2023, in this ordinance, you remove the Director of Community Development from decision-making, you remove the municipal manager from decision-making, and you remove the mayor from decision-making in that change that you made, and you put yourself into that spot in all places that were in that ordinance, which would be another example that Mr. Cameron Perez-Redia pointed out, where you took the power away from the administration and gave it to yourself. Now, when I look at the new ordinance that we have before us tonight, on page 3, section 2, in this ordinance, it says again, only upon concurrence of the municipal manager or mayor. That was something that you took out a year ago. So was the taking out of the decision-making for the administration temporary? I don't remember, but it's very curious. And like I said, the ordinance from last year was an example of where you took the decision-making away. I'm glad that it says municipal manager or mayor, but I'm wondering if that is a mistake or if the granting of permission to yourself to make the decisions was temporary. I was not able to figure that out. If somebody can possibly give me an answer for that in an email, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public hearing is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Ms. Brawley. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. So we have a couple of amendments, and I want to provide a little context for this ordinance. This is one that comes back before us each year because it is temporary. And this year it was submitted by the planning department, and they actually asked us which route we wanted to take, whether or not the authority would rest in the planning department or by approval of the assembly. Last year was the first time we were asked to do this, and we didn't necessarily understand or know what it would look like. And no permits for temporary snow were brought before us. And so in thinking about how we might want to do it this year, I think the amendments will make it clear that we're likely comfortable with the planning department handling this as long as we can stay in the loop and we can ensure certain protections. So with that, I would move Zalatel Amendment number 4.
Second.
Motion to amend by Ms. Zalatel. Zalatel, amendment number 4, seconded by Ms. Brawley. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. Amendment number 4 requires an environmental remediation plan that adheres to the MOA standards for the operation of permanent snow disposal sites to be a part of the application. So the operator who's proposing to do a temporary snow disposal site has to say, well, how are you going to take care of any environmental impacts? In speaking with folks over at Development Services, their primary concern is water runoff and any trash that could blow off of the site. And so they know what they do now. They're going to ask and start with the site proposed site operator saying, this is my plan, compare that against their permanent snow disposal site requirements, and work together to come up with something that works. Thank you.
Ms. Brawley.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a conversation with the planning department as well, and I guess I'll save other comments for later, but I would support this ordinance, or this amendment. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Perez-Redia? Mr. Solt? Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
On a vote of 10-0, the amendment passes. Ms. Zalatel?
Thank you. Actually, Ms. Brawley has the next
Ms.
amendment.
Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to move Brawley Amendment number 2.
Second.
Motion to amend by Ms. Brawley. Brawley, amendment 2, seconded by Ms. Zalatel. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. And here I'll finish my point about the planning department. I spoke with them and really said that I believe it's important for the public to know because, you know, we may get questions, for example, as assembly members if someone gets wind of this happening. So this amendment really adds a notification requirement. It does say that it needs to be submitted as an informational report on the next regular assembly meeting. So I'm contemplating, as I noted, this could be a late on the table item because it is informational to make sure that it is timely and that it gets to us, knowing that we have pretty frequent meetings, but there can be some time between them. So I would urge your support.
I would briefly speak to that. I'm not sure why a notification like this would be sufficient to pass the late on the table procedure. Nothing in it would change, so I don't believe it would rise to the level of being laid on the table. I think it should be hit on the addendum. They can notify us by email, but I want us to ensure we're hewing to the principle that the laid on the table procedure is for items that are very timely and must pass, not just because. And so an email notification would be sufficient rather than 8 votes and all that time and process in the last minute. So, but otherwise, I strongly support the amendment. So, anyone else? Members may proceed to vote on the amendment.
Ms. Bronca?
On a vote of 10-0, that amendment has passed. We're now back on the main motion.
Mr. Constant.
Thank you, and I'll just briefly reiterate that when the department approached me for the consideration of introducing this item, they came with 2 versions, one that had the assembly and one that had the department director making the decisions. And we opted to go with the department head making the decision because last year it didn't turn into a nightmare. And this year, though, we added a requirement that we are notified and that the snow disposal sites that are set up temporarily have to ensure the same environmental mitigation. For me, the issue of the environmental mitigation was primary because we have strong controls on what happens at a snow disposal site. And the next property owner will know that that happened there. And we don't want to lay in a piece of land with PCBs that might be collected and then not have it mitigated so that the next buyer becomes the owner of an environmental nightmare. And so to me, that was the only concern that remained. This is temporary, it will expire, and it's only in consideration because we've had record snow. So I urge your support. I don't see anyone else. Members may proceed to vote. On the main motion. Mr. Solt is still here.
Mr. Solt?
Yes.
Ms. Bronca?
Yes.
On a vote of 11-0, AO 2024-6 as amended has passed the body. Now we roll back to the beginning of our agenda. So the administration wanted to postpone indefinitely 10D6, so there's no need to take up that item or do anything on it. So we'll just let it die for lack of a motion. Next, we have item 10D19, AM 112-2024, Anchorage Port Commission, Dick Traney. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Alatel, seconded by Mr. Rivera, and I think that's all fitting. Mrs. Alatel.
Thank you. I move the amendment number 1.
Second.
So there is an amendment proposed by Mrs. Alatel. It's been distributed and seconded by Ms. Brawley. It just clarifies the term date.
Yep, I'll just say briefly that us going into a second day made this possible instead of having to wait to the next meeting. So there we go. I guess the delay helped a little bit.
Okay, so any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. Bronca?
Yes.
Mr. Solt?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 0, the amendment has passed. We're now back on the main motion. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Wait till she gets back. I don't know where she went. Ms. Zalatel? Where is she? Oh, there you are. Okay. On this, members may proceed to vote. Ms. Zalatel? You can speak it. Yes. Ms. Zalatel votes yes. Don't do that.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
So on a vote of 11 to 0, AM 112-2024 as amended has passed the body. Next we have item 11B. 11B is AM number 12, 2024, Urban Design Commission, Julia Folland. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zalatel, second by Member Walland. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 0, AM 12-2024 has passed the body. Next, we have item 11C, AM 13-2024, Urban Design Commission, Allison Gordy. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Zalatel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cross. Any discussion? Seeing, hearing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
Mr.
You know
Stolt?
what? We did, I think.
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 0. I'm sorry, I skipped an item. So 11B has passed the body. That's, I think we need to redo both of those. I think I read them wrong. So I'm sorry, you guys, Madam Clerk. So, yeah, why don't we roll back up? I missed one. It's 11A. Let's just go there. I'm sorry. 11A is AM 20-2024 Anchorage Equal Rights Commission, Sharon Gibbons. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Martinez. Any discussion? Hearing seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Hold on. I sent you a message. I'm sorry, Chair.
Okay, go ahead. The call has, the roll.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify. I was the one who pulled this, and I did have a conversation with Ms. Gibbons, and I'm completely confident that she's going to be a great addition to the Equal Rights Commission. And I wanted that on record.
All right, thank you very much. Then, if there's no one else, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
So on a vote of 10 to 1, AM 20-2024 has passed the body. Now we'll go to 11B. Sorry, Madam Clerk. 11B is AM 12-2024 Urban Design Commission, Julia Folland. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Walland. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 0, item 11B, AM 12-2024 has passed the body. Now we have item 11C, AM 13-2024, Urban Design Commission, Allison Gordy. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms.
Second.
Alto, seconded by Mr. Walland. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 0, AM 13-2024 has passed the body. That brings us, I believe, to our last item. Actually, no, we have a couple more. So item 14H is Resolution AR 2024-15, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating amount not to exceed $1,300,000 from unrestricted net equity to the Solid Waste Services Refuse Collection Utility Operating 560000, Solid Waste Service Department for debt payments. Ms. Alto?
Thank you.
Wait, hold on. The public hearing is now open now.
Okay, thank you. Move to continue the public hearing to February 13th.
Second.
So there's a motion to continue by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Walland. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. That's at the request of the administration.
Any discussion? Seeing, hearing none, members may proceed to vote. Yes.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 0, AR 2024-15 the public hearing has been continued to the meeting of February 13th. Next, we have item 14I. 14I is AR 2024-16, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating operating projects committed general fund 190000 fund balance in an overall amount not to exceed $3,622,556.92. The operating projects committed general fund 190000 to continue previously appropriated project purposes in 2024 within multiple departments. The public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body? Ms. Zalatel?
Thank you. I just want to make a quick disclosure. Some of this rollover money is specifically for homelessness, shelter, and housing. The coalition is not recipient of it, and it is in a broader package. Traditionally, as long as there are no amendments to this, I've been able to vote on an omnibus package, but I wanted to make that disclosure.
Thank you for that disclosure, and if there's no objection, it's fine. I don't see a conflict or a substantial personal or financial interest. So on this then, members, what's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Volland, seconded by Ms. Brawley. Any discussion? Hearing, seeing none, members may proceed to vote. There we go.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 0, AR 2024-16 has passed the body. Now it brings us to our last item. Item AO 2023-136, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending building codes at Anchorage Municipal Code 23.10, Anchorage Administrative Code 2018 addition to allow optional independent plan review of structural design for commercial building permits. Public hearing on this item is now open.
I wanted to move to continue the public hearing to the meeting of February 13th.
So there is now a motion
Second.
to continue the public hearing to the meeting of February 13th made by Mr. Cross, seconded by Ms. Brawley.
We discussed this briefly at the work session last week. At the last CDC meeting, Building Development Services, Ross Knopfsinger brought forth his version of a more expanded approach. We're looking to incorporate that or amend ours, and so, which is great for me because it actually is a greater reach of third-party opportunities than previously anticipated. So if you'll allow us the opportunity to amend and come up with a more conclusive S version by that time, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. And just to add to that, my intent as one of the co-sponsors is not only to work with the co-sponsors, but that we would very likely continue the public hearing again to either the meeting of the 27th or March 5th, but we know the 27th is busy. So the intent is not to necessarily take up that item, but to continue the public hearing and give people an opportunity to see a new version of the item. Thank you.
Ms. Salatil.
Thanks. I'm not for these serial continuances, so if you're not wanting to take it up till the 27th or the 5th, please just move it out to that point. Also, if you don't need me, then take it up on the 13th, but if you would like my input, then after the 13th. Thanks.
Ms. Bronga.
I just wanted to tell Mr. Cross I appreciated continuing this, whether it's the 13th or whatever, get it organized before it's on the floor. I think it's helpful for everyone. Thanks.
So, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, I just talked to Ann real quick, and so we'll just go ahead and move to the meeting of, continue the public hearing on the 27th. We should be done by then.
Okay.
Do one and done.
I concur.
Okay, good. So now the motion before us is continue the public hearing to the meeting of the 27th of February. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes?
Mr. Stolt?
Yes?
On a vote of 11-0, the AO 2023-136 has been continued to the meeting of February 27th. Thank you, and we have less than a minute left for audience participation. So hurry on down, but it's less than a minute. Speak fast. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Brian Winsky. I go by Bree, she, her pronouns, 14 years trans female, residing out of the Alex. I just wanted to take a moment and say, you know, there was a lot of arguments back and forth yesterday, and there's continuing on today. It's always good to see that we practice our approaches in the assembly and the administration to the public. So great participation on all parts. I also wanted to make sure that we bring awareness as the year has changed into the new years, that we are mindful of everybody's spaces and try to be more pleasant this year. I hope everybody has a good start to the year. I know we have many things and we're a little bit beyond the beginning of the first year. I hope our cold weather shelters continue and that we find ways to not have a repeat of last year with our homeless situation. So I continue to encourage you guys to work towards that and the city to come together as the community and back all that. So I appreciate everything you guys have done. I appreciate the direction we're going. And I would like to see us continue to move forward in healing our city. So thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.